Doctrine and Covenants 126 is a revelation received by Joseph Smith on behalf of Brigham Young shortly after returning home from his mission to England. Here's the backstory. As an intrepid disciple of Jesus Christ, Brigham Young had been serving missions almost from the time he joined the church in 1832 in Minden, New York. Shortly after his baptism, for instance, he served missions to New York and Upper Canada in 1832 and 33. After his call to the Quorum of the 12 2 years later in 1835, Brigham served missions with his quorum in the eastern United States from 1835 to 1837. Then, in obedience to the Lord's call in D&C 118, Brigham left from Nauvoo on September 14, 1839, with his fellow apostle Heber C. Kimball to preach the gospel in England. But Brigham Young was also a devoted family man. As he left Nauvoo this time to serve what would be his longest mission and his first overseas, he bid farewell to his wife Mary Ann and his 6 children, 2 daughters, ages 13 and 9, a 5-year-old son, a pair of 3-year-old twins, a son and daughter, and a newborn daughter born only 10 days earlier. What added significantly to the difficulty of his departure was that both Brigham and everyone else in his family was quite sick. He later recalled the trying circumstance. "When I left my family to start for England, I was not able to walk 1 mile. I was not able to lift a small trunk which I took with me into the wagon. Every one of my family were sick." Yet, he said, the prophet Joseph confidently assured him, "If you will go, I promise you that your family shall live, and you shall live, and you shall know that the hand of God is in the calling for you to go and preach the gospel of life and salvation to a perishing world." So, he said, "When I was ready to start, I went and left my family in the hands of the Lord and with the brethren." One final reality that also added to the difficulty is that the Young family was extremely poor at this time. Brigham recalled, "I left my wife and my 6 children without a second suit to their backs, for we had left all our property in possession of the mob in Missouri." Brigham was regrettably only able to leave his wife $2.72. In a letter he wrote to Mary Ann only hours after parting, Brigham apologized about the lack of money, saying, "This is almost robbing you, I know, but I do not know what else to do. Brother Joseph has pledged himself that the wives of the 12 should have what they wanted." And then, concluding in faith, he said, "I do feel as though the Lord would provide for you and me." Brigham's multi-month journey to England with his fellow apostles was tedious, and he was sick for much of the journey. Yet once he finally set foot on the dock at Liverpool, he said, "I gave a loud shout of Hosanna. I felt that the chains were broken, and the bands that were upon me were burst asunder." The British field indeed was ripe for the harvest, and Brigham and his fellow apostles would energetically thrust in their sickles over the next year to establish the church there and to bring souls to Christ. Just over a week after his arrival in England, Brigham was appointed to be the president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, an appointment formally confirmed in D&C 124 the next January. Over the next several months, hundreds of converts joined the church, and Brigham led efforts to publish printed materials for the British saints, such as the Book of Mormon, hymn books, and a church newspaper. Meanwhile, the heavy demands of young children and her own poor health had prevented Mary Ann from writing very often to Brigham. But through a letter from Valete Kimball to her apostle husband Heber C. Kimball, Brigham learned that his family back in Nauvoo were needy, their house hardly able to be called a shelter, and his 2 oldest daughters were sick with the chills. This prompted Brigham to write home to Mary Ann, "How I long to see my family, or to know that they are well and provided for, so that they do not suffer for food and raiment. Sister Valete says your house could hardly be called a shelter. This makes me feel bad, but I will do all I can for you to help you to make you and the children comfortable while I am in the vineyard." 2 months later, after informing Mary Ann of the welcome news that he and the 12 would start for home that next April, he wrote, "I pray for you and the children continually. It is all I can do," adding his conviction that they were all in the hands of the Lord God of Israel. In spite of her distressed circumstances, however, Mary Ann expressed gratitude for her husband's kingdom-building efforts in a return letter to him that April. "I am glad to hear the work of the Lord is prospering in England," she wrote. "It gives me much joy." On the evening of April 20th, the evening before they left England to return to Nauvoo, Brigham reflected in his journal on just how miraculously prosperous the last year had indeed been for him and his fellow apostles. "It truly seemed a miracle to look upon the contrast between our landing and departing from Liverpool, he wrote. We landed in the spring of 1840 as strangers in a strange land and penniless. But through the mercy of God, we have gained many friends, established churches in almost every noted town and city in the Kingdom of Great Britain, baptized between 7,000 and 8,000, printed 5,000 books of Mormon, 3,000 hymn books, 2,500 copies of the Millennial Star, the church newspaper, and 50,000 tracts, and immigrated to Zion 1,000 souls, and have sown in the hearts of many thousands the seeds of eternal truth, which will bring forth fruit to the honor and glory of God. And yet we have lacked nothing to eat, drink, or wear. In all these things I acknowledge the hand of God. Brigham arrived home to Nauvoo on July 1, 1841, where he was joyfully met by Joseph Smith, dear friends, and his family. Amidst their happy reunion, Brigham found that his family was then living in a small, unfinished log cabin situated on a low, wet, swampy Nauvoo lot. It was in that same house 8 days later that Joseph Smith visited Brigham and dictated there the brief revelation which became Section 126. So that's the backstory.